Permit me to issue and control the money of a nation, and I care not who makes its laws. Mayer Amschel Rothschild, founder of the Rothschild International Banking Dynasty. So how powerful is the Federal Reserve? The Federal Reserve is the most powerful entity in the country, and they're not ashamed to admit it either. Hear it from Alan Greenspan, former chairman of the Federal Reserve.
What is the proper relationship, what should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. What the relationships are don't frankly matter.
You see, in addition to this, the feds can't even be touched by investigating parties. Hear from former Inspector General Elizabeth Coleman.
Inspector Coleman, you're the Inspector General for the Federal Reserve, right? Okay.
That's correct.
Have you done any investigations concerning the Federal Reserve's role in deciding not to save Lehman Brothers, which led to shockwaves that went through the entire financial system?
We do not currently have an investigation in that particular area.
All right, what about the $1 trillion plus in expansion of the Federal Reserve's balance sheet since last September? Have you conducted any investigations regarding that?
We call it a review, and so if you could determine investigation, they have different connotations.
Right, but you're the Inspector General. My question to you specifically is, do you know who received that $1 trillion plus that the Fed extended and put on its balance sheet since last September? Do you know the identity of the recipients?
I do not know. We have not looked at that specific area. I think it may be important at this point too, just to bring up a certain aspect related to our jurisdiction. We do not have jurisdiction to directly go out and audit Reserve Bank activities specifically.
You see, the rules of the Fed are quite clear. Number one, the Federal Reserve shall have the monopoly on creating money in the United States. Number two, the Reserve Bank shall be a private corporation. Number three, the shareholders, the articles of incorporation, and the management of the Fed shall never be open to public scrutiny. And number four, the Federal Reserve can print as much money as Congress requests and charge interest to the U.S. taxpayer. Again, this is money they can print from nothing. So why is this so important? You see, the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve are now the model for all other central banks. There is a central bank, just like the Federal Reserve, in every country in the world, except for North Korea, Iran, and Cuba. Those are the only three countries that don't have a central bank. And in the year 2000, okay, so not too long ago, that list actually included three other countries: Libya, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Also, since World War II, the US dollar has been the world's reserve currency. And that means that every other currency is backed by the US dollar. And the US dollar was also backed by gold. And you can see this. If you look at the old school $20 bill, you can see right here where it says that it's redeemable in gold on demand. You see, back in the day, every piece of currency used to be backed by gold, even this old school $100 bill from 1928, redeemable in gold on demand. And because of the fact that the US dollar was backed by gold, exchange rates were stable and easier to predict. But then in 1971, due to a falling US dollar and the Vietnam War, President Richard Nixon took the country off the gold standard.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States. Let me lay to rest the bugaboo of what is called devaluation. Your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow as it is today.
This means that the US dollar was no longer redeemable for an equivalent amount of gold. Your $20 bill that was redeemable for gold was probably burned in some incinerator somewhere and turned into this, where instead of it being redeemable for gold, it simply says that it's legal tender. okay? And even more recent, our $20 bills look like this, where again, it's just a note that is legal tender. But again, you cannot redeem this for gold. What this truly means is that the US dollar was now backed by absolutely nothing. And it has been that way ever since. Now, a currency that is backed by nothing is called fiat currency. And in Latin, the term fiat means let it be done. So because the government says that it's currency and says that it has a value, it has a value. Now, the problem with currency that is backed by nothing is that whenever the Federal Reserve creates currency and fires up their printing presses and creates currency out of thin air, it dilutes not only the US dollar, but it also dilutes all other currencies since they are backed by US dollar. And since the US dollar is backed by nothing, it means that all currencies are backed by nothing except for faith in the US government. Faith that our government is going to make good on all those treasury bonds and that we're going to make good on our currency. Now just understand this, guys, this faith only exists because most people have no clue how money is created or where it comes from in the first place. Again, if you ask most people where does money come from, they're going to say it probably comes from the government. But as you're learning today, that is not true. Now, I believe that when everything is broken down into its simplest form, that anybody can understand where our currency and money comes from. So how does the Federal Reserve create and issue currency to the general public? Well, we are going to discuss that in the next video.